And we're back. You pulled your wits together. It smells of evil. It certainly does, the doctor agreed. It is, after all, the home of total evil. It carries the spirit of its owners. It's only a piece of metal, Berrigan said. The doctor raised his eyebrows. And a house is only made of bricks and mortar. Have you never walked into an empty one and felt totally unwelcome? I have, Perry said. It's an odd feeling, as though the house doesn't want you inside it. Well, what do we do about this thing? Berrigan wanted to know, indicating the sphere. Nothing, the doctor replied. Watch. He moved closer to the sphere, reached out his hand, and touched it. Immediately it was gone. He passed his hand through the space where it had been standing as though performing some trick, then stepped back. The sphere promptly reappeared. It's got a safety device rigged. Only its owners are allowed to touch. But where did it go? You wondered. Probably outside until I moved away. Amazing, Perry said. She sliced a tendril that was getting too close. But the Leechen's closing in again. It was. Berrigan had been right. The speed of its growth was incredible, reaching ever outward towards you. The commander eyed it with distaste. This is almost certainly means the end of my ship. It's the worst possible thing that could have happened. We're doomed! The control room things were going no better. The imps were still taking their pleasure in plaguing everyone, to the point where it was difficult for the men even to attempt what they were ordered to do. But still they were goaded to their posts. The Aaron came through clearly on the radio. Aaron here. Have you tracked an M closing? Over. Tedder leapt for the microphone, determined to warn the Aaron off, but it was a hopeless endeavor. In the flash of a second, imps had appeared all about him, and he was beaten brutally to the deck. You were warned, Todd said. Don't try it again. He crossed to the console and surveyed the instruments. He found what he wanted and spoke to the Aaron. We have you on the screen, Aaron. We'll prepare to receive you. Thank you. Normal docking procedure, I take it. All as usual. Out. He turned from the console and smiled widely at everyone. Well, we'll soon have more company. Won't that be nice? No one spoke. Swing out the grapples, he ordered, and he bullied the men, and they hastened to obey, going to their places for the docking routine. But there was a cry of horror as one of them opened his control panel and a Leechen creeper lashed out from it, nearly catching him. He jumped away and shouted a warning, but there was no need. Others had already found the same. There were cries of horror and disgust as the Leechen crept inwards from every nook and cranny. The men shrank from the threat, but were again ordered to continue their work, and they had no option. Constantly tormented as they were, they had to carry on. Several tried to protest, but were promptly punished. It was Tedder who called a halt to them with a sharp order, but it was also Tedder who muttered to the man working beside him that perhaps the Aaron might be their only hope, so best they help her alongside. The message whispered its way through the crew, so they did as they were ordered, trying to fend off the coming Leechen as they did so. Then the Aaron was hovering alongside. The grapples whined out, and she drew gently in with short bursts of her navigating burners. A welcome sight she was, too. Their only chance of survival. She drifted in, then she came onto the grapples with a soft bump. Within her lay the future. Within the hold, you had all decided that you had no choice but to surrender yourselves to Tedder and his mutineers. You had no idea what had happened up front, but you did know that the hold would soon be uninhabitable. The Leechen pressed ever closer, almost sobbing for you, wicked of intent, but compelled to eat. It was Perry who brought you up with a jolt. Where's the doctor? She asked. Where's the commander? You were tempted to comment acidly that the doctor had probably gone off on one of his exploratory tours when you saw what had sharpened her tone. We're cut off, you gasped, seeing how the Leechen had grown and cornered you both. But where did they go? Probably to find out what else we could do rather than surrender. Maybe, Perry said grimly. But just for the moment, I can see only one course for us to take. You nodded your understanding, and both of you hefted your machetes and waded in at the growth. Your time and efforts were wasted. There was no defeating it now. As fast as you cut, it grew even more quickly. Soon you were confronted with a solid wall of seething menace. It was a terrifying experience as you both were forced to retreat before something that multiplied in defiance of destructive blades. You both called out for the doctor and commander, but there was no answer. What you did not see was that two of the dead men had appeared behind you. Each carried a club, and each used it, felling both Perry and you at the same time. You fought for your consciousness, but... When you came to, you found that Perry and you had been tightly bound. Two of the dead men had bludgeoned you, and an imp stood beside them. Once it saw that you were both conscious, it smiled a malicious smile and cooed an instruction to its assistants, who picked you both up. "What are you doing?" Perry demanded. "Just making you a little more comfortable. We want you to enjoy yourselves." They hefted you both to the side and laid you down in dangerous proximity to the Leechen. To your disgust, the tendrils began to reach out towards you, and you could not move. There was threat enough, but one of the men had to move you in closer and say that he didn't want you to be too far from the heat. Things did not look good. While this was happening to you, the Aeron had locked on and its walkway had been connected. All was expectancy. Help was at hand. Tedder and his men waited. There had to be some way out of this misery. The imps jumped this way and that. The dead men loitered. All depended upon how the Aeron could deflect this curse that had descended upon them. The Leechen crept its way ever in, bringing with it the threatening end and consuming the oxygen as it did so. Not that any ship could carry more than was essential, so not only was the threat a physical one, but organic as well. Lungs starved of oxygen do not fare too well. Ask any doctor, least of all the doctor, who would be only too pleased to give you a half-hour lecture upon the various functions of the body, starting from the top of the skull and working his way down to the soles of the feet. Not that any of this would have contributed a smidgen to the morale of the crew at its lowest ebb ever. They had had enough, far enough from anywhere as to make no difference, and controlled by imps and dead men, not to mention the on-creeping threat of the Leechen. So much a man can stand, then his mind gives out. These men had about reached the end of their tether. They waited to see what the Aeron would present. In the hold, the doctor called for you. A wall of tendrils writhed before him and Berrigan. But where were you? Where was Perry? They chopped and hacked at the evil growth, but, as before, it was very much a losing battle. The faster they chopped, the faster the growth. There appeared to be no way they could defeat it. "We can't even hear them," Berrigan asked. "Because of the Leechen," the doctor answered. "It's created more or less a solid wall between us. No sound will get through that." "I don't know why I followed you. I thought you were intelligent," Berrigan complained. The doctor nodded. "Oh, I am. Well, we'll find them. I think the question is how." How indeed. The control room, the door from the Aeron at last opened. In strode the commander, pink and cheerful. "Good day, all. Everything going well, shipmates?" "No!" Tedder shouted. "Get back aboard your ship!" "Why?" "We're in trouble. More than you could even think of." The Aeron commander surveyed him blandly. "Oh, I wouldn't say that. In fact, I'd go so far as to say you're in more trouble than you think." He turned to the imp, standing beside Tedder. "Crew of the Aeron taken under control. Everything now under your command. I await your orders." and everyone's hearts sank as more imps came in through the door from which he had just entered. They looked ever so jolly. In the hold, the doctor had stilled. Berrigan grew irritable. Well, you aren't achieving much, are you? Put that marvelous brain of yours to work. Why don't you? I am, the doctor replied. Do I recall you correctly as saying that Leechen won't grow if deprived of oxygen? You do? So what? The doctor indicated the implements fastened to the bulkhead. Are they fire extinguishers? What the heck do you think they are, underarm sprays? Keep your levity for later, the doctor said. What I want to know is, are they foam for killing fire from lack of oxygen? Berrigan looked briefly perplexed. Yes. Then use your head and let's get to work. The doctor snatched one from its clip, punched the cap, and started spraying the Leechen. The foam leapt out, tangled with tendrils, then covered them. The Leechen cowered, then folded, no longer able to find the oxygen essential to its breeding. Berrigan quickly saw what the doctor was about and joined him. Out went the spray as they used gun after gun. Down went the Leechen. The hold was a firmament of flying globules. Bubbles and clusters filled the air, and all the time the Leechen cried before it went down. But still they gunned their way on, firing before them as though using flamethrowers, but in equally as deadly a manner. As they cleared the path, they stepped forward, walking over the silenced plant as though over a carpet. They found you. With no ado, they freed Perry and you of your bonds and helped you up. Perry gave the doctor a dour look. Traveling with you is beginning to lose its charm, she said. The doctor looked at her in what, in any other person, would have been total innocence, but in him was completely unconvincing. Why is that? It's too dangerous, she said, stepping aside from a still-moving tendril. With you, it's one shambles after another. Oh, surely not. What about that lovely holiday we had in Xanthe? What about it? She said. 10 dawns of peace and quiet, followed by what? Nothing but chaos, I tell you, Doctor. I'm growing tired of it. Surely not, he said in some indignation. Who could wish for a fuller life? Consider what you'll have to look back upon. Won't that be something to tell your grandchildren? A full life, she said. Full of what? It was not often you saw Perry in this sort of mood, but she was in now. The threat of the Leechen had got through to her, and she was in no temper to pay attention to Berrigan, uneasily watching the sprayed plant beginning to struggle through again. And anyway, you assume a lot. What makes you so sure I'll live long enough to even consider what a full life is? The way you carry on, my chances are as close to nil as anyone's can ever be. Now, the doctor protested. As they wrangled on, your mind drifted away again. Admittedly, you could only travel through time and space with the doctor and TARDIS, but under the unwitting influence of the doctor, your mind could go anywhere, which is what it proceeded to do. We'll be back with the final installment.